Welcome once again back to the lab. It is your old Professor Pilk, and we need to talk today about the incoming raid. It's actually still about 2 weeks off, but we are getting our very first shiny raid, and that is, of course, going to be Rayquaza. Now, there are a number of things that are kind of interesting factors in this. Number one, you guys know Rayquaza is going to be a 5-star when it drops, which means he's going to be level 75. So what we're going to do over the course of the next 2 weeks is talk about a couple of builds that you can bring that most of these we probably already built that I think are going to be really handy in this fight. First things first, I really think that Tinkaton is a really good candidate for this upcoming raid, especially with the Stellar Terra. You know, I think that kind of is I don't want to say a no-brainer, but I think it's a really good option here for her. Now, with this build, very specifically, we are going special attacking. I think that is kind of like her forte. That is going to basically mean that we're going to give her a modest mint, and that's going to basically give her the opportunity to do the maximum amount of special attacking damage that really, I think, in this particular situation is going to be better for her. I just realized I didn't adjust the IVs here, so the IVs are actually for an older Mon, so this isn't exactly representative of the proper IVs, but the EVs, the yellow bar here, is actually correct. Now, also, I don't have her ability right. Ability-wise, let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. So, ability-wise, I really do kind of think Mold Breaker or Own Tempo would be fine. I really don't think either one of those are going to be really that big of a deal. In fact, let's modify this here real fast. Now, I made a slight modification here. I actually gave her Pickpocket, and there's one really big reason why I did that. Number one, if you remember back to when we had the Mewtwo raid, our very first legendary raid, that Mewtwo raid, I think it was barring paradoxes maybe, that Mewtwo raid, Mewtwo actually had an item, and so I feel like it's completely plausible that Rayquaza might come to the, with a berry or something like that. And being that Rayquaza is most likely going to use physical moves, I do kind of feel like Pickpocket might be at a slight advantage over the other abilities. I don't think it's going to be a game changer, but I do think it could change a little bit of the mechanics of it more in your favor. Now, we're still talking about bringing a level 100 Pokemon to a level 75 raid. But because of what I'm going to talk about here in a moment, I do feel like that is definitely well within the realm of possibility. So, in fact, let's talk about Rayquaza's potential in this event, because Rayquaza's ability, I don't think is going to be that much of a hindrance. The big thing with Rayquaza is Rayquaza hits really, really, really hard. Rayquaza is really good with both special defense and physical. Special attack and physical attack. Because that its defense isn't so great, but its defense isn't still bad. Basically, HP is 105 base. Both physical attack and special attack are 150. Defense is then 90. Special defense is also 90, and speed is 95. So you are really talking about an incredibly substantial Pokemon, no matter what the stats are. That said, Rayquaza also has access and most likely will have Dragon Dance and could very well have Swords Dance. So I do feel like physical attacks are kind of are most likely what you're going to have to deal with. Now, when it comes to Tinkaton, there is kind of one downside to this mod that we do need to talk about. But first, let's talk about the physical attacks, because obviously, I think buffing out your defense is going to be your best possible option. And I put for the regular 4 leftover EVs into speed, but I don't think speed is going to be a factor because Dragon Dance is essentially going to negate any of that. Dragon Dance is going to buff the speed up, so you're always going to be slower than him. You just basically need to make sure you can tank all those hits. The downside is Swords Dance is going to be a problem. Because of that, I gave her Baby Doll Eyes to kind of lower that attack stat. I think that is going to be one of the biggest factors here, and that could make this raid very, very difficult, at least from a solo perspective. So Baby Doll Eyes is going to negate some of that physical attack that's incoming. I don't think special attack is really all that threatening, so I think that's going to be a potential upside there. The exception to that is he does have access to Flamethrower, which could be a problem. If he does have Flamethrower, you are going to be weak to that. However, because it is a level 75 with no major buffs versus a level 100, I think you'll be just fine. I think we'll have very little problem kind of tanking at least 1 or 2 flamethrowers throughout the fight. I think we'll be okay. Another reason why we got the Shell Bell there, granted we always have that, but that's going to be there to kind of help increase your healing. The rest of this is pretty straightforward. Baby Doll Eyes lowers the attack, so that's going to help you out. Metal Sound is going to lower the defense, help you do more damage. Unfortunately, we don't really have a move that kind of buffs your damage, but I think between Metal Sound and Baby Doll Eyes, I think that's all the status moves you really need. Then for our DPS, we basically have Flash Cannon. Now, we also do have Draining Kiss, and that is going to be a super effective fairy move, but I don't think we're necessarily going to need that. I think, honestly, Flash Cannon will do enough damage in the long run once you're buffed up. And basically what you do is you open up with Draining Kiss to do the early amounts of damage that you need to do to kind of wear the Pokemon down. So that is, in a nutshell, the Tinkaton build. Now, it is probably not a perfect build, but the whole point in these first few builds that I'm going to bring to you guys is to kind of reutilize Mon that we have built over the past few raids. We've been doing now raids for 2 years. Tinkaton is one we've used a multitude of times. In fact, the last time we used her with a Stellar Terra, and I think that's going to help out big time. You could use her with a Steel Terra, but I honestly feel like you've got enough time. You got 2 weeks. You can farm up the Stellar Shards. You can get her with a Stellar Terra, and that will just help you out drastically, because then both your Fairy move being super effective and being buffed up, and your Flash Cannon, which isn't super effective, but with all the buffs is going to hit really, really, really hard. I think that is kind of like an optimal situation to be in. And as far as I'm concerned, I won't call it perfect, but it is as good as we can kind of expect out of this mon. So that, in a nutshell, is the Tinkaton build. I think this is a really good mon for this event. The only 2 weaknesses you have are Fire, which, like I said, isn't really that big of a deal. The one that is a little concerning is Ground, and that means that if Rayquaza does have access to Earthquake, which he does, if he's utilizing Earthquake in this raid, which he does have access to, that could be the one thing that kind of takes her out of the running. Though, if I'm honest here, it really comes down to Baby Doll Eyes, because if he does Dragon Dance enough or Swords Dance enough, that would be problematic, but also I think it's something that's easily negated through Baby Doll Eyes. So I think no matter what, we still have some kind of a safety net there. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. This definitely is not the last mon that we're going to build for this. In fact, it's the first mon that we've kind of talked about for this, and I do think we've got a lot more coming. So, Shiny Rayquaza will be taking it on here in about 2 weeks. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, stay up to date, and I'll be back with a lot more coming up here really, really, really soon. We're going to do 2 to 3 of these builds a week leading up to that raid, so stay tuned.